Hello.
Welcome to Coach Rush episode 18. Joining me today is Aaron Timms, self-healing mentor and public speaker from Conscious Success from Colchester in the UK. Hi, Aaron.
Hi, Marcus.
Thank you for spending time with us here, Aaron, today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
Great. So we got to know each other at the Train the Train seminar back in August of this year. And initially I felt that you got a very, very important message, especially in the times right now, nowadays. So at your workshops, you're not just, teaching and showing techniques, but you're a living, walking example of an amazing self-healing process. Let's start with, your history. So you've been involved in a car accident that killed your best friend and your girlfriend, and that left you paralyzed, and yet you're able to walk today, and you look like a healthy, strong man. So one might ask, okay, how is that possible? And checking out your material and your video, there's a line that really struck me when I saw your video, and that was, through tragedy, I found healing in love and forgiveness. What do you mean by that, Aaron?
Wow. Yeah, thank you. Well, it started off, as you mentioned, in September 2008. I was involved in a serious car crash in which my girlfriend of 6 years and my best friend of 8 years were killed. And I broke my back. I actually dislocated 2 vertebrae, trapped my spinal cord. And when I was taken to the local Colchester A&E, and I had MRI scans, and when they looked at my back and saw how severely broken it was, they transferred me to Romford, which is there's a specialist neurological unit there. When I was transferred to Romford, I was taken there by air because to travel by road was too dangerous. It could have been fatal. Now, when I was in Romford, I was there for 8 days in intensive care before they were willing to operate, because it took the whole team of neurosurgeons and orthopedic surgeons 8 days to plan the operation. Now, when the operation was finished, it took almost 9 hours, and my dad really wisely at the time made sure he was the only person there to receive the news of how the operation went. He made sure that none of my other family were there. So the spinal surgeon called him in, Mr. Timms, please come into the office. The operation went really well. We have some good news and we have some bad news. The good news is this: the operation went incredibly well. We managed to realign the spine without any further damage. It took longer than we expected. However, we achieved what we set out to achieve. The bad news is that the damage to the spinal cord is much worse than we originally anticipated, meaning that Aaron's never going to walk again. Aaron's paralysis is permanent. Now, I don't know whoever listens to this may be a parent, they may not be, but I'm sure you can imagine the weight that hit my father and what he was bearing in that moment. And he went home and he spoke to my stepmother, and she's been involved in the self-healing industry for many years. And she was aware that if I knew the true prognosis, that I may give up, and without hope and belief, we have nothing. So based on her suggestion, and after my father and her talking, they decided that I wasn't to know the true prognosis, that it wasn't right to remove my hope and belief. So my dad came back to Romford and he said to the spinal surgeon and the consultants that Aaron is not to know the true prognosis. Now, because I was 21 years old at the time, it was legal protocol that I was told. So they said, I'm sorry, Mr. Timms, but he has to know the truth. My dad stood in the doorway of the intensive care room with his arms stretched to the side, holding the frame. And he said, "You are not going to take hope and belief away from my son." Now, due to the exceptional circumstances, the fact that I was deeply depressed, I was grieving, I had a lot to try and take in. The consultant and the spinal surgeons, they agreed that due to the exceptional circumstances, my dad had to tell me, but he could pick his time. Well, he never did. He lied. He told me that the spinal surgeon, the consultants, they think that I'm going to walk again, that everything is going to be okay. That's the prognosis. He told the spinal surgeon that I was too distraught with the real news, with the prognosis, that no one was to talk to me about it unless he was there. So the truth is, when I was transferred to Stoke Mandeville Spinal Injury Centre, I was transferred there to learn how to be rehabilitated into a wheelchair, learn how to not only be rehabilitated into a wheelchair, but how to live life in a wheelchair. But in my mind, I was going to this miracle place, to this place where miracles happen, miracle doctors were there, and I was going to walk. Now, when I arrived at Stoke Mandeville, I was wheeled into a side room, and there was lots of assessments done, and I met my new consultant. And as I was laying there, I was terrified. I was staring down the end of the bed at what felt like a stranger's feet. I was so disconnected from my own body. And I was afraid. I didn't really know what was going to happen. And in walks this tall, gentle-looking man. His name is Mr. Newton. And he was this gentle giant. He had this energy around him. And all of a sudden it was like, wow, the miracle doctor that I'd been really dreaming about, that I'd been focusing on, that was going to be at Stoke Mandeville, the guy that's going to wave the magic wand and make everything okay. And he had this beautiful presence about him. No surprise, because I later found out that he was a priest until the age of 40, and he had a career change because he wanted to help people. So an incredible person. Now, after he finished carrying out the initial tests, the one I remember in particular was putting a pinprick down the side of my body and then down my legs to see where I could feel. And sure enough, from the waist down, no movement, no feeling, no nothing. As he left the room, he stopped dead in his tracks. It was almost like this invisible door he'd just walked into. He turned around and he looked me in the eyes and he said, "Aaron," he said, "all is not lost." And in that moment, I thought, this sense of relief came rushing through my body. And it was like, yes, he's going to tell me it's going to be okay. And then he said, "With your upper body strength, with your strong arms, you're young," he said, "you're going to make a great paraplegic." That comment hit me like a steam train. That was the moment when I realized that actually no one around me believes the possibility. No one around me actually believes this is possible. And that crushed me. That hurt. Now, in answer to your question, I found healing in forgiveness and love, in a moment of wholeness and peace. And this is how it happened. My stepmother introduced me to the possibility that the mind can heal the body, that the mind is greater than the body, and there's limitless possibility. She introduced me to stories like the story of Bruce Lee. He broke his back before he became famous. And that installed a sense of belief that maybe this is possible. And the truth is, I was 21 years old at the time. My main concerns were football, beer, going out, my girlfriend, just living life carelessly like many 21-year-olds do. My job, I loved my job. I was actually a mechanic at the time. I trained as a vehicle technician for Jaguar. So this thought, this completely new idea to me that the mind could heal the body was alien. I thought it was crazy, to be honest. I didn't believe it. But what did I have to lose? It was face the rest of my life paralyzed in a wheelchair, depressed, grieving, or surrender to the possibility and accept there may be a potential inside me that could do that. Who knows? So I started to do these techniques that I'd learned, I was reading about and watching some films about. They were breathing techniques, meditation techniques, visualization techniques. And what happened was fascinating, and I had no idea what I was doing at the time. I created this visualization, and the purpose of this was to try and send signals from my brain through my spinal cord down into my legs. And I imagined it like a water pipe, like my spinal cord was a water pipe, and it was blocked, and I was trying to force something down it to remove the blockage and allow the flow of water, allow the electrical signals in my nervous system to get down to my legs. So I'd wheel myself in my wheelchair into the physio gym at Stoke Mandeville every day, and I would strap myself onto this exercise bike. And the exercise bike was not like one you would imagine in a normal gym. It had a proper seat. It was designed for paraplegics. So there was knee straps, so you could strap your knees in, ankle straps, so you could strap your ankles in. And it was motorized. And it was designed for paraplegics, so their blood flow could move around their body a little bit, and just to get the body moving. And at the top, it had a digital reader, and the purpose of the reader was to measure whether your legs was putting any effort in, measure the resistance. And as I strapped myself into this every day, I would close my eyes and I would visualize myself doing the Tour de France. In my mind, I would picture myself cycling, and I would do it so often and focus so intensely that it would become real. So I would imagine the wind rushing through my face and past my body. I would see the mountains and the trees in the distance as I was cycling through the south of France, see the beautiful countryside. I would feel the burning in my legs. And I had the privilege of, because I was freshly injured, I could remember the feeling of burning in my legs when I trained. So I would really tap into that feeling and feel it. And it became so real. Now, I did it initially to try and heal my legs. It was like, I'm going to visualize, heal my legs, do what Bruce Lee did, do what many have done before me. And to be honest, after a week or two of doing this, it got pretty... There were moments when it got tough because I didn't see any results. It was working, but I had no idea. I thought it wasn't working. The truth is I just couldn't see it because my legs weren't moving yet. Now, because I got so good at it, there were moments when it was fun and it became joyful. In moments of, I was in the midst of a living hell. I was in a nightmare. I was living in hospital. I no longer had my relationship, my best friend. I couldn't walk. I had lots of other issues that come with being a paraplegic. Having to have a catheter in full time is just one of many. It was literally a living nightmare. Looking around me, seeing so many broken hearts. It wasn't just me. Everybody in that hospital had their own story. But in the midst of a nightmare, I was able to tap into a moment of actual joy. And in that moment, when I closed my eyes, I wasn't in that hospital. When I closed my eyes, I was falling back in love with life. I was on the Tour de France. I was cycling through Paris. I was winning it. I was so grateful for the fresh air, and it became so real that I managed to find this moment of I describe it as wholeness, peace. I fell back in love with life. And it was like I could forgive everything that happened to me. It was like I managed to pull myself out of being this victim of my situation and my environment. And that was the moment when something miraculous happened. My mum came to visit me, and I told her, "Mum, come and look at this. I've been doing the Tour de France." And she looked at me like, has he bumped his head as well? Like, is he okay? Is he crazy? And I explained, no, Mum, look, I've been doing this visualization. And I took her into the gym and I strapped myself in and started to cycle, and I tapped back into that new reality I'd created in my mind, the Tour de France. And because I was so good at it, because I enjoyed it, it was like a beautiful escape from a real life nightmare. All of a sudden I was back in it, and then there was this scream. It was like, ah, and it shocked me. And I looked up and my mum, she screamed and she was shaking and crying. There was this joyous, scared look in her eyes, and she was tremoring and pointing at the digital reader on the bike, and it read 300%. And that was the moment when my legs literally burst back into life. And that was the moment when I felt a true sense of peace and wholeness and forgiveness and love in the midst of a nightmare. So that's what I mean by healing through forgiveness and love.
Wow. I mean, what can one say to that? Did you actually know what you were doing at that moment? Was it goal orientated? I mean, you mentioned that you studied like Bruce Lee and what he did, and the meditation, visualizing like water floating from your upper body to a lower body. Was it in the end just for you a place to feel connected to life, to have this love again, this feeling? Or did you always have that vision and the goal of being able to walk again, or was it both?
It was a mixture of both. It started off as, I think I can heal myself, I think I can walk again. There were moments of a complete lack of belief when I really didn't believe in myself or that it could be possible. And there were other moments when I really did believe it was possible. And it started off as a journey to heal myself. And I fixated on the Bruce Lee story because in my mind, I just kept saying to myself, if he can do it, I can too. He's human. And I know he's Bruce Lee, but actually he's a human being like we all are. And I kept saying that to myself. But then it turned into this beautiful escape, and it turned into like I had an idea of what I was doing, but I had no idea of what I was doing, really, is the truth. I was doing and following some of the techniques I'd learned, and I was making my own. I was just trying different things. And the truth was, I call it unconscious success. And what I mean by that is I was doing all the right things without knowing that I was doing all the right things. So I had incredible success in healing my body unconsciously. And actually that's where the name for the business came from, conscious success. Because what I want to spread to the world is successful healing, but being conscious of exactly what's happening and why, being in full control of the moment and being able to apply it to people's lives. So a mixture of both is the answer to that.
There's an interesting word that you used a couple of times when you were reflecting on what happened in that clip I saw, and that word is overcame. I overcame that old version of myself, is what I interpret, because you said when you left the hospital, this wasn't the Aaron that you were before, and you overcame that.
Yeah, that's a big one, because to heal your body, to actually transform something in your body, you have to overcome who you are right now. And I had to do that in two ways, really. I had to overcome the old version of me, my personality, my character, the person who I was just a 21-year-old interested in football, interested in work and going out and having a few drinks, just like many. And that was kind of my personality. And then all of a sudden I was taken out of life. You know, it was like this big hand came from the sky in the moment of a crash, picked me up and put me in this new life. And it was a life where I was in hospital and I had this new identity. And I had to overcome that person as well. So I had to overcome my old personalities, my old beliefs, my old habits, the person who I was before the crash. And I also had to overcome the new identity that I had become from the crash. And it's a process actually that's very fascinating. And I'm still learning a lot about it now. And I'm learning with my clients as I'm working with my clients and I'm seeing this evolve. To become healed, you have to become a new version of yourself, because the old version of yourself was the version that got ill or injured or whatever it may be. And to become a new version of yourself, you have to overcome the old version of yourself. You have to break the habit of being you. So that's what I had to do in that moment. And again, I did that unconsciously, is the truth. I was so determined to walk again. I was so desperate. I was so afraid that I was willing to do anything. And that desperation, that determination was my greatest asset, probably, because I was overcoming myself in so many ways, mainly by creating new beliefs in myself and creating new habits in myself. And the truth is, I wasn't really aware that I was doing that. It's only looking back and really studying what I did in depth and starting to study the mind-body connection and really understanding that. And I now understand the true meaning of how I overcame myself.
That's highly fascinating. You know, Dr. Joe Dispenza is someone whose work has impacted you as well. We talked about that back at Train the Trainer. And if you study Dr. Joe Dispenza, you'll find out that there are amazing similarities to what happened to you. So he had an accident and he broke his vertebrae as well. And the prognosis was that from 4 surgeons was that he should never be able to walk again. But yet he was able, just like you, Aaron, to overcome that. And how he does it was that he's beautifully explaining this in an interview with Lewis Howes, that he was just paying attention. And he was tapping into or connecting to the intelligence that gave him his life and that's responsible for, you know, everything, digesting food and keeping your heart pumping. And he was connecting to that intelligence, and he was literally visualizing the template of the vertebrae, of the healthy vertebrae in his mind to manifest. So I guess this is what you what you mean, right?
Absolutely. Dr. Joe is one of my biggest idols. I study his work most days, actually. He's fascinating. I went to his week-long retreat in Brighton at the beginning of the year, and it was absolutely incredible what I witnessed. And I'm only now, through Dr. Joe's work and through other people's work, of course, and through studying my own work. I have lots of video footage from when I was in hospital. My stepmother had the awareness to record a video diary, or persuade me to record a video diary, actually. So we have footage, and I studied that as well. And through studying myself, Dr. Joe, people like Bruce Lipton, Dr. Bruce Lipton as well, I've come to realize that there is this, you know, and I don't understand it fully. Maybe I never will, but I'm going to try very hard to. But there is this intelligence. There is something way greater than we've ever been permitted to believe. We're taught to think in such a limited way. We're taught to think in a way that's limited to our environment. And when we can think beyond that, when we can think beyond ourselves, when we can think beyond our environment, we tap into something that's way greater than we are. And it's this infinite intelligence. Some people call it the quantum field. Some people call it the divine, the universe. There's lots of names thrown out there. Now, like I said, I don't understand it. I'm not a quantum physicist, but what I do know is it works. It's something that I applied unconsciously, successfully, when I was in hospital. It's something that Dr. Joe Dispenza applied when he, like you rightfully said, he broke his back in a triathlon when he was 26 years old, and it worked for him. And it's worked for many others as well. We're not the only ones. And I'm applying I've simplified these methods and techniques into 2 simple processes called resistance, drive, decision, and knowing, doing, being. And these 2 simple processes that I'm applying and giving to my clients, I'm loving and supporting and guiding them through, is the same process that I use, just a more simple and condensed version that I've packaged. And whatever it is they're doing is working because they are healing their bodies. So what I'm trying to say here is sometimes we have to believe beyond what we can see. One of the biggest barriers that I come across with most people, nearly everybody, including my clients, and it was a journey that I went through and process I went through as well, is belief. When we believe something is not possible, our mind tends to make every excuse, every reason, justify every reason, and it shows itself in the form of the little voice as to why you can't achieve it or why it's not possible. Equally, when the mind believes something is possible, it will fill you with every excuse and reason and justify why you can do it. And just by being able to switch that belief, we can achieve, our thoughts become limitless. We tap into a limitless potential within ourselves. And when we do that, we tap into something great. We tap into a possibility that is way beyond us. And people are doing this. People are doing this, and they're healing incurable, supposedly incurable diseases. You know, I saw it at the Dr. Joe event in Brighton at the beginning of the year. I saw a guy overcome Parkinson's, but where he didn't fully overcome it, but he reduced nearly all of his physical symptoms, and he had some really severe ones within a week. I'm now working with 2 people with MS, and their symptoms are reducing within weeks just by using these methods. And part of the reason is because they're surrendering to the possibility and accepting that it's possible. And to me, that's fascinating, because if one person can do that, then there's no reason why everybody can't do that, because ultimately we're all the same. We're all human beings. We have different views, feelings, and things like that. We come from different backgrounds. We have different experiences, but we are all human beings. The human body is very much the same. So to me, that demonstrates the potential and the possibility within every single human being on this planet.
Talk to us about more about these techniques you're mentioning. What exactly are these techniques, and how do you use them with your clients?
Wonderful question. So I'm breaking the reason I put them into those 2 processes is because a common theme that I've noticed in my clients and people in life in generally, actually, this happens to pretty much all of us. And it's something that happens to me, and I've had to be aware of it. And it's resistance. When you can overcome the resistance, you can overcome massive obstacles. I'll get into that in a moment. Then it's tapping into a deeper drive. When you really connect with why you would want to heal your body. Because to ask yourself the question, why do I want to heal your body? It's obvious. I want to be better. But actually, that doesn't connect you deeply to the feelings of what are the consequences if you don't heal? What are the consequences if you don't make that decision today to make a change? What are the consequences if you do? What could life really be like? When you connect to a deeper driving force within yourself, and maybe the window for that is through someone else, maybe your children or a loved one or a dear friend, family member. When you connect with a deep driving force within you, you make a decision that goes way beyond I might heal or I want to heal, or it goes way beyond a thought or a possibility. It becomes a part of who you are. It moves into your body. It becomes cellular. So when you make that decision, that's the hardest point. That's the point where there's no going back. So once you've been through that process, resistance, drive, decision, you're set for healing. Let me just touch on resistance slightly. Resistance is something that we all feel in all walks of life, because it can manifest in ourselves in fear. Now, when you read up the definition of resistance, the definition reads, the ego opposing the conscious recall of anxiety-producing experiences. Now, what that means is,
wow.
yeah, it's a big one to take in, right? Now, what that means is the ego, and the ego is the self, it's the conditioned self, it's the sense of self-worth within us, it's the person that the identity that we've learned to become through our life experiences. Not necessarily the person we want to be or want to become, but it's who we have become. Some people are aware of this and many aren't. Now, when the ego opposes something, it's opposing the conscious recall of anxiety-producing experiences. Now, what does that mean? Opposing the conscious recall means moving out of your automatic programs, moving into conscious thinking, which is a place of freedom, a place of free will. It's the choice to decide who you want to become, the limitless person that you have within yourself, the healed version of you. And the reason the ego opposes that is because you have to become a new person, which means you condition yourself in a different way, meaning you starve the ego. And the ego is a bit like me. It likes food, and it doesn't want to die either. So what it does is it does everything in its power to oppose that conscious recall, to stop you moving into freedom and free will. Now, the way that it does that, because the mind and the body and the brain are so intrinsically linked, it forces things up in the form of fear, emotions, distractions in the body, even pains, itches. It forces things up in the mind in the form of the little voice that says, tomorrow's a better day, or we don't have time today, or you're not good enough, or they're better than you, and all of those type of things. When you can understand what resistance is, you can know how to work through it. And when you move that resistance, it's like moving the massive brick wall that is standing between you and who you want to be, the healed version of yourself. Imagine it like this. Imagine it like you're in a dark room where the lights are off, it's pitch black, and you know there's a door in the room that you can get out, and you know it's unlocked. So you know it's possible to get out. But actually, you've been feeling, your hands are in front of you, but you've been feeling around, and all you can feel is this wall. You just can't find the exit. Now, if someone was to turn the light on, and by turning the light on, I mean awakening yourself, becoming conscious. If someone was to turn the light on, you would see that actually the door is right in front of you. It's only maybe a foot away. The reason you couldn't find it is because between you and the door was a big brick wall. And that brick wall is called resistance. When you understand that, you can knock it down. You can knock it down with ease. It's not so difficult. You actually find that the wall is no longer made of brick, it's made of foam, and you can push it out of the way. Now, once you've done that, you're in a position, you've been through resistance, you've connected to a deep drive within yourself, and you've made a decision on a cellular level to heal. This is when it gets fun. This is when it gets easy. By going through that process properly in the beginning, rather than just trying to jump straight into visualizations and things that are going to be difficult to build a concept of in your mind, by going through that process, you create a foundation. It's like you clear the ground to pour this foundation ready to build this beautiful building, this beautiful structure, one that's going to last forever, one that's permanent. And then it's moving into the next process, which is knowing, doing, and being. And knowing is adopting a new philosophy about yourself. It's adopting a philosophy that says, I can heal myself. When you know something, it's all well and good. We can read all the books in the world. We can read all of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. You can read my book. You can read Bruce Lipton's. If you know it, it's great. It's a start. But knowing isn't enough. You can read all the books in the world and they're useless unless you're willing to do and become. So by adopting a new philosophy, if you focus on this, you double the amount of, synaptic connections in your brain, and you actually start to rewire your brain. You start to rewire a new version of yourself, physiologically, chemically, biologically. But the problem is, most people stop there, because to take that beyond just a philosophy, to take that beyond just an idea and a possibility, you have to start doing it. And this is where the visualization work comes in. Just like the Tour de France, if you start doing it in a way where you submerge yourself in this new reality to a point where your body doesn't know the difference between the actual reality or non-reality. So by closing your eyes, by stepping into this new world, it's like stepping into the Matrix. If anybody who's listening to this has seen the film The Matrix, you'll understand. If you haven't, watch it. It's like plugging yourself into the Matrix in this new reality. And what you're doing there is you're doing. You've gone from knowing to doing. And when you're doing, your body starts to become. And the more you do, the more you chemically change your body, the more you change your emotional state of being, the more you actually wire yourself to a new version of you. And you move into being. And you physically manifest exactly what's been happening in those other realities. So the processes go resistance, drive, decision, knowing, doing, being.
I mean, Dr. Joe Dispenza also said that the hardest part about change is to not make the same decisions and choices as yesterday. I think that's so simple, but yet true. And I was about to ask you if you would describe your own healing process more as an active or as a passive process. Passive meaning, was it more about letting go in a sense of forgiveness? But like you describe it, it's also paired with the heavy active process of training that visualization, right?
Yeah, that's a very in-depth question. Now, the way that I'll answer it in the best way that I possibly can. Now, there's two ways to look at it, because if you have an injury, then that's an environmental damage to your body. That's something that's like what happened to me. It was an impact injury. It was an environmental injury to my back. So what happened is there was damage done to my body, and I had to fix it. I had to train my mind to fix it. Now, the body's innate ability to heal itself started to kick in, because it started to mend my spinal cord. It started to put scar tissue there, and because I lost some of the cerebral spinal fluid as well, it started to kind of like vacuum itself in. Now, by the body healing itself, it created scar tissue, which was actually a barrier for the nerve signals to get from my brain, move down my spinal cord to reach the nervous system in my legs. So for me, I had to do those visualizations to keep sending new signals from my brain down my spinal cord, and make new neurological pathways, so that I was actually rewiring myself to a healed version of myself. Now, that's for an injury. Now, for an illness or a disease or disorder in the body, that can be very different, because if someone, for example, has a chronic disease, let's use MS as an example, multiple sclerosis. Now, what's happened here is, at some point, is the body has been knocked out of balance. At some point, there's been an incident in this person's life where it's knocked their body out of balance, energetically, emotionally, chemically, and that could have been through an incident of trauma. So my experience so far, and based on also what I've read and Dr. Joe Dispenza's case studies as well, other people's case studies, and also the people that I'm working with, I'm yet to learn of anyone that has a illness, a disease, or a disorder like that has not had some kind of trauma or emotional upset. Now, what happens is that trauma, it's like the brain takes a picture of that moment and that trauma, and it becomes a memory. And that memory can replay itself over in our minds. And every time that memory replays itself, it creates that feeling in the body where the body feels like the body is actually reliving the experience that happened in that traumatic moment. And in that moment of trauma, the body goes into fight or flight stimulus. It goes into run, fight, or hide mode. And what happens there is the heart starts pumping faster, the eyes dilate, the autonomic nervous system lights up, and breathing gets deepened so that more oxygen can get to the muscles so the body can run away. And it's like survival mode kicks in. And what happens is, in that moment, it's like the body goes into shock, into survival mode. And if someone has a moment of trauma in their life, but doesn't manage to release from that trauma, from that memory, if they stay anchored to the emotions of the past, to the emotions of that trauma, the body can live in survival mode. And by living in survival mode, it can downregulate. You'll have to look up Dr. Joe Dispenza's work to fully understand this. But
I mean, that's crazy. Sorry if I interrupt you, but isn't that crazy that so many people are just in survival mode all the time? And just, I'm so happy that you also mentioned Dr. Joe Dispenza in your work. I can only recommend people to check him out. There's a beautiful interview he did with Tom Bilyeu as well on impact theory. And what he said there is the introductory sentence. It's a scientific fact that the hormones of stress downregulate genes and create dis-ease. So many people are starting their day not in the present, but in the past. Their thoughts are from their older versions from yesterday. So you don't have to be the person you were yesterday, but that's the first reflex. That's the first instinct to people, their trained behavior to start the day from the perspective of yesterday and thinking the thoughts of yesterday. And tying into that, since we've talked about this with my last guest, Tom Helmreich, is the fascinating topic of water, because we are water species. We are water, water is the dominating element in our bodies. And what Dr. Joe Dispenza said to that is that every thought has a frequency, like an electromagnetic signature, and that can be disturbing, and it can weaken the molecular structure. So if it's a destructive thought, or let's take the resistance thing that you just brought up. So water stores the information, and just to throw it in as a sort of technical part in here, Aaron.
Sorry, just say that again, please, Marcus.
Yeah, just as a technical addition to that, since water, we are made up of water, and it seems like everything we are imagining in our creative faculty, like the visualization, this manifests in the body water and can since have the impact of restructuring, like in Joe Dispenza's case, the vertebrae. He imagined this, and in your case, your visualization of being the Tour de France cyclist there. It's like, yeah, I feel that water has an important role in the whole thing. Does it make sense to you?
So it's interesting you bring that up, because I've just finished reading a book called The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton. And he explains in this that every single cell in our body, we have 50 trillion cells. Every single cell in our body has receptors around the outside, the skin of the cell. And each cell has the ability to think independently. So When you have a thought in your, as you think, you send a signal through your body, and your central nervous system, your autonomic nervous system is sending out to each part of your body, wherever you place your focus and your attention, like Dr. Joe teaches, is where you place your energy. And as you send that thought, which is energy, through your body, it has the ability to actually change the structure of the cells individually, and that's the DNAs, and more specifically the proteins in the cells, which means that you have the ability through thought alone to upregulate, downregulate your genes, and actually transform your body physically, heal your body. And that's a very, very exciting prospect. But of course, that works both ways. If you have thoughts that are, I don't like to use the word negative because that's a bit wishy-washy, but if you have thoughts that are disempowering, thoughts of lack of self-worth, of frustration, of anger, of fear, of anxiety on a daily basis, it has an opposite effect, and it actually has a detrimental effect to your body. And as you mentioned, if you wake up every morning thinking the same thoughts, you're going to take the same actions. Thoughts lead to feelings, lead to actions. If you have the same thoughts, you're going to have the same feelings, you're going to lead to the same actions. Your life is going to play out exactly the same. And it's making that change. It's breaking the habit of being yourself. It's another book actually by Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's got Breaking the Habit of Being You. And it's an incredible book. And you need to do something different. And it's not easy. It's not easy, actually. It's because resistance comes up. And the mind is a master illusionist. It has the ability to trick us, and we do not see it coming. It's why the ego is so powerful, because the ego works very closely alongside the little voice. And the little voice says things to us that are so logical, that can be easily justified, that we're so willing to listen to the little voice. And actually, the little voice doesn't help us become limitless. It keeps us in this place, and it stops us from change. It stops us from creating new habits. One of the reasons that I was so successful in my healing in hospital was because I had the benefit of being in a new environment. So because I was sideswept from life, because in that one moment, in that car crash, the big hand came from the sky and it dumped me in the hospital, I already had all of my habits broken. And I actually believe, and there's a small part of me that's actually grateful for that, because I didn't have to battle against breaking the habit of being myself. And that's often the hardest part. That's often where most of the resistance comes from. And I believe that's actually why most people struggle to heal their bodies, because the resistance becomes greater than the belief. Because if the belief is greater than the resistance, then your mind will work in tandem with your desired outcome. It will support you in every way. The little voice will help you, guide you, love you, support you. If the resistance is greater than the belief, then you're working against your mind, your own little voice. And that can be tiring, because the little voice, it just doesn't ever be quiet. And to fight with the little voice, it's like having a tug of war every single day, every moment. And I see this. Many people have the tug of war, and some people win on some days. Some people lose on other days, because it requires a lot of energy. Even the most determined and motivated people get tired sometimes. But if you can switch your belief, if you can tap into that potential you have, your belief becomes greater than your resistance. It's like putting down the tug of war. It's like putting down the rope and walking away. And no longer do you need to spend all of that time pulling on the rope and all of that energy. You can all of a sudden, you have this freedom within yourself to spend this time and this energy on you, to look within. And that's a beautiful moment. That's the moment when you really transition into, and you take the first leap into becoming the new version of you.
I feel the context is very, very important as well. And by the context, we mean the environment. I mean, when you were in the hospital and you started the process of healing. You mentioned it was a nightmare for you. It was like hell, and you were clinging to that future self, to that place of love and feeling alive again, that visualization. So how important, I mean, there was nobody around you, you said, that really believed that you would achieve this, except this, this person, the ex-priest, like you mentioned. So how important is the context, Aaron?
Very important, or not important at all. It completely depends on whether you have the awareness and the ability to switch off from the environment. Now, what I mean by that is it's very difficult because we all have our lives to run, and there's so many environments in the environment of our life. You know, your relationship with your spouse is one environment. Your relationship with your son or your daughter is another environment, or your relationship with your friend is another one, etc. Your working life is another environment. So you have so many environments within environments. And then, of course, you have your home, and then when you're out. Now, if you can take a moment to create a new environment within yourself. So for example, if you can close your eyes, if you can cover your ears, if you can switch off your senses in a way that you can literally switch off from your environment, you can become greater than your environment. You can think greater than the environment that you're in. And that's what I did when I was doing the Tour de France visualization. Again, I didn't realize what I was doing at the time. But in the moment, the environment was physio gym, lots of other people in the wheelchairs and doing their physio, lots of other physiotherapists, lots of noise, lots of banging, lots of smells, lots happening. It was a very busy environment, but I was able to switch off from the environment and create a new environment. So, in answer to your question, is the environment is incredibly important because it stimulates us, it triggers us. People trigger us. You know, our relationships can trigger joy and love, but they can also trigger frustration and anger. And those environments are incredibly important. However, if you can think greater than that, then you have the ability to switch off from your environment, and no longer does the environment become so important.
Now, of course, there are different pathologies, diseases, and you touched upon that earlier. But if someone is hearing this, and let's say, I mean, where can we begin? One person might have a cold, next one has a flu or a twisted ankle, but also more severe things like a broken leg or even cancer. But on the other hand, there are like emotional conditions. Someone has a depression or anxiety or blockages. Now, is there like an universal approach to healing itself?
Yes and no. There's a universal approach to living life like you love yourself. There's no exceptions to moving yourself out of survival mode. There's no exceptions to, there's a universal way to leave behind the traumas of the past and become a new version of yourself. And it can be very simple. Now, please don't excuse the word simple for easy, because they're two different words. But it can be simple, but not necessarily easy. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. So there's a universal way to become happy, to bring joy into your life, to bring love into your life. To heal the body, there's lots of different things. I mean, when it comes to colds and flus, sometimes we just get colds and flus, and we just need to ride it out and let the body do its thing. The body has an immune system, it can deal with it. Broken ankles and things like that. You know, the body has this automatic innate ability to heal itself, and it will do so. And there's time for surgery and things like that as well, because broken bones can be put back into places. However, when you're talking about a disease, which is a dis-ease in the body, a disorder in the body, that becomes very different. Somewhere, somehow, the body has manifested a disorder. Somewhere there's been a malfunction. And there's lots of famous books where you can look up the metaphysical links and the mental causes to the physical problems. And usually you can find that different emotions tend to be linked to different disorders in the body. So if you have a cancer, then in my opinion, it is reversible. Now, the disorder in the body can cause different levels of damage to the body. And let me be clear, because there is a point when the body says enough's enough, and it will give up, or it will say there's no going back. And that's because the disorder in the body, the disease in the body, has caused too much damage where there's no turning back. That's very rare, in my opinion, because the body has this innate ability to heal itself, which is absolutely incredible. It's way, way more powerful than we've ever been permitted to believe, really. And it's possible that there's three elements. There's the root cause, there's the damage done to the body, and then there's the symptom. Now, you need to understand the symptom to know what the root cause may be. When you can go to the root cause and understand it, you can heal it. Now, the root cause, for example, may be anxiety caused by a trauma in the life, and that anxiety may be the root cause of a symptom in the body that could be, for example, something like multiple sclerosis or cancer. If you can understand the symptom, then go to the root cause and heal that, make a change, become a new version of you. Dr. Joe famously says, to create a new person reality, you need to create a new to create a new person reality, you need to create a new personality. And it's brilliant.
Yes.
It's genius, because when you really look into that comment in depth, it's going to the root cause and changing your emotional state of being and who you are. That then your body reacts, and that changes the symptom. And then, of course, you'll ignite your body's innate ability to heal itself, and it will reverse the damage done to the body.
And also, I feel like, just being grateful for all the work of the doctors leading up to this point that we can have this conversation. And what we are also saying is that at a certain point, of course, you need medication, or at least from my part, I would say, there are conventional methods of healing, or like a surgery. And let's just respect that. Let's just respect how far we've come in the medicine, in the pharmacy, and let's just be open for new things. I think we can do better and be open to these approaches as well.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up, Marcus, because it's important to honor and acknowledge the work that medical science has done, and the medical team that looked after me and cared for me, and not only the A&E department, but that did the surgery on me. These are incredible people that they took very good care of me, and I'll be eternally grateful for that. And there are so many wonderful doctors and physicians that do so many wonderful things. And there is a place for medication as well. There's a place where medication has its value. In my opinion, especially in an emergency situation, medicine can save lives, and it does save lives. I think it's very important to be aware, though, of the possibilities without medication, because there's moments when medication doesn't serve us well, and it's finding the balance and finding those lines to know when it's appropriate and when it isn't. And it is important to acknowledge what a wonderful job that so many doctors do.
Now, you mentioned that you are working with people one-on-one, but you're also doing many seminars and workshops. One can check it out at your social media channels. Now, personally, I want to thank you for one particular post you made, and that was about being a teacher, being a trainer, being on the stage, and maybe feeling uncomfortable with it, or being nervous about it, or just feeling yeah, it's not the right thing for you. But there was a particular post where you said that it's not about you, it's about the message. It's about just the thing itself, that you can just be like a medium, or you can just channel the information. And it's just about that. It's not about you. And when you do that, you start to notice that the surrounding is almost dissolving. And it doesn't matter if there's 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people in front of you. So thank you for
You're
that, Aaron.
welcome. I remember the post now. As you were talking, I was thinking, which post? But now I remember. It was, public speaking has always been a big fear of mine. And I realized that
Yes.
one of my big learnings at Train the Trainer, and afterwards when I did one of my events, when I was getting ready and getting prepared, I was so nervous. And I realized, because that was about me, and that was actually the selfish part of me. What would I look like? What are they going to think of me? And when I stood back and took a deep breath and thought, this is, Aaron, this is not about you. This is about something way bigger. This is about the message. This is about the mission. It's about the people and the brilliance in the room, the audience that need, deserve, and want help. And the moment I had that real realization of it's really not about you, Aaron, was a moment when it all kind of dropped away. Like you just said, the environment completely changed. The room was no longer scary, and it became beautiful. And I think that's a big lesson that we should all take, that it's not about us, it's about something way bigger.
It's like you're forgetting the scenario and you're taking yourself out of the equation. And in that sense, we want to encourage all the great people, all the practitioners, the healing practitioners, to make a step forward and to share their experience as well. These days, it's so easy via social media, via podcasts like these. We definitely need all these cases, of people having fought cancer successfully, experiencing that healing process. We need to get this out. As when we start to get this more out, this will encourage people and to see it is possible because he did it, she did it. So yeah, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. When people can see that others have done it, it's like this belief that's installed. And I feel it inside me at the moment, and I feel it around me. It's like this wave of consciousness is sweeping across the world right now, partly due to technology, because the world is so accessible, like you just said, through social media and podcasts, etc. And there's a wave of consciousness where people are waking up because they're hearing stories, they're hearing messages like mine. And there's so many people out there that have done the seemingly miraculous. And all of a sudden, people are starting to learn that there is something, there is a possibility, there is a potential. And it's beautiful, because the more we can spread hope and belief, the more we really can change the world. We really can bring millions of people out of this survival mode and into a life of love and joy and togetherness. And that's exciting.
But it's also important to mention that it's not just about love, peace, and harmony. It's also about facing these, let's call them dark elements, like you said, the resistance, and just to accept that there's a dichotomy. We have to just accept and, like you said, the resistance, and how to just deal with it, not tranquilize it away or take pills unnecessarily if it's unnecessary, but just getting in touch with that, or with the little voice thing, not trying to medicate it down or press it away, but getting into a dialogue with it.
Absolutely. Suppressing it is a big one. And we can do that through distractions. Many do it through alcohol. Many do it through medication. There's lots of ways to do that. You're absolutely right. It's not just about thinking about love and joy. It's about being willing to face adversity. A friend of mine taught me that confidence only ever happens after the event. And that really stuck with me, because I thought, wow, yeah, so many times when I've been nervous, afraid, like before my first event, when I was stepping out onto the stage to speak, and it's so true. On the other side of that resistance is something awesome. It's confidence, it's belief, it's hope, that it's creating something that's incredible, whether that's a healed version of you, or whether that's something in your family life or career, whatever it is. And facing adversity is a big one. And it's most of the time, just admitting it actually is the key. Just having the awareness to stop in the moment and realize that the little voice, the feelings of fear, just realize it's resistance. And often that's enough just to say, oh, okay, I'm aware now. I know what that is. So I'm going to choose to not let it stop me. And sometimes that's enough to move beyond it, actually.
Belief Bound Mind is the title of your book. Now, if there's just one thing you could share with us from your book, what would it be?
Belief. Belief is the big one. Belief is...
Yeah, I think belief, yeah, that's interesting. Yet it's a powerful word, but not so tangible, isn't it?
It's a difficult one, belief. It's a double-edged sword. I mean, there's lots of lessons in the book. There's lots to take from it. To pick one, I mean, one of the more simple ones, actually, that I would say is values. There's a chapter in the book about values, and it's about asking yourself, what do you value the most? And if you can stop in the moment, because we often want to pick what's easy, or we don't realize we're sort of subconsciously picking a moment where it's a distraction. It's a form of suppression. But if you can stop in the moment and say, what do I value more? So for example, when I give my clients certain exercises to do, healing exercises, and I say to them, if you feel like you don't want to do it, if that TV remote is screaming at you, press the button, turn me on. Or if there's things that you really want to do, just stop in the moment and say, what do I value more? It's a simple question. Do I value that TV program more, or do I value healing my body? And if you can ask yourself that one simple question in any moment, you hold yourself accountable, and it's really powerful. That one question alone has the power to change your life.
And in that sense, since everybody who knows me knows that I'm into routines, you know, the power of doing things you don't want to do in that moment, and feeling that this other energy or power is coming in if you stick with that, that's really powerful. Absolutely. So the website is aarontimsofficial.com. The Instagram channel is the official Aaron Tims, I think.
Aaron Tims Official,
right?
Is the Instagram channel.
Aaron Tims Official, thank you. So is there anything you like to add to that discussion, Aaron?
I just want to say thank you for having me, first of all. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We do live events where we're implementing this work. We're starting in Colchester in the UK, but our intention is to spread these worldwide. We want to take them globally. So if you're interested in coming to any of the events, or you want to read the book, Belief Bound Mind, or you're interested in working with me one-to-one, then please, I work with people globally, all over the world. So distance is no barrier. If you're interested and you want to learn more, just please go to my website, as you mentioned, Marcus, www.aarontimsofficial.com, and please reach out. I'm here to serve. I really want to change people's lives. So if you have something that you want help with, then please do reach out.
Will you come to Germany as well?
I would love to. The plan is to go to as many countries as possible, because I believe that this message is so powerful. As many people on this planet as possible need to hear it.
When will be the next bigger event?
We're doing workshops every month in Colchester. We're doing a one-day event next spring. The best thing to do is as we're evolving and as we're building them, we're constantly uploading them onto the website so you can see what they're about. So to keep updated, go to the website, sign your email address, and you'll get emails letting you know. So the next big one is on December the 15th.
Brilliant. So go to Aaron's website, aarontimsofficial.com. I guess you can register for the events there. And from my side, Aaron, I was really looking forward to that podcast, to that interview. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I think the message that you are getting out to the world is, the scale is amazing. Just in general, what is world and the new knowledge coming in, fusing with the old one. So thank you so much for being on Coach Rush here, and looking forward to meeting you whenever destiny wants.
Thank you, Marcus. It's a real pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you everyone for listening. We'll see us in the next episode of Coach Rush. Bye.